In the winter of 1872, an American merchant brigantine was seen drifting in the Atlantic with no one on board. The ship looked seaworthy, and its main sails were set, but the deck was empty and unnervingly quiet. This was the Mary Celeste, a vessel that would enter history as the most famous ghost ship. When the British brig de Gratia spotted the Mary Celeste, the men on deck could not believe their eyes, expected a damaged or wrecked vessel, but instead they found a ship intact and abandoned. When they boarded, the silence hit them before anything else. The cabin doors were open, and the ship smelled of oil and alcohol, but there was no sign of violence. Meals were laid out on tables, pipes and personal items rested, as if their owners had simply stepped away. The captain's log ended days earlier, with no record of trouble and no cry for help. The lifeboat was missing, and one small detail turned every simple question into a knot of mystery. Why would an experienced captain order his crew to leave a seaworthy ship in good weather? The captain, Benjamin Briggs, was known for his seamanship and responsibility. He was traveling with his young family, and his careful nature made their disappearance even harder to accept. The cargo hold contained barrels of industrial alcohol, a valuable but potentially volatile freight. Some barrels had leaked, and there were traces of oily residue in the hold. One theory proposed that alcohol vapors created a fear of imminent explosion, and the crew abandoned ship. If the crew had attempted a temporary stay in the lifeboat to wait out the danger, a snapped tether could have left them stranded. A drifting lifeboat and a ship slipping away with its sails up is a simple, tragic scenario, with no dramatic bloodshed. But this theory fails to explain the missing navigational instruments and the absence of the ship's logbook. Why would a panicked crew take charts and logs but leave clothing, jewelry, and personal valuables? Some suggested foul play from other vessels, but pirates and robbers always steal valuables. On the Mary Celeste, nothing of value was taken. Another idea was that the crew left due to an unknown contagion or sudden illness, but no bodies were found, and no signs of disease were present. There were stories whispered about seaquakes and mysterious subterranean explosions that could throw up terrifying waves of gas and foam. Such phenomena could have created panic, but left little physical trace on the ship itself. A more technical possibility rests on cargo chemistry and human error. If alcohol vapor filled the lower decks, the captain might have wanted to lower the crew away from danger while the boat stayed connected. A slight error or rope cut a sudden swell could separate the lifeboat and doom those waiting in it. That is an ordinary tragedy that needs no monster or villain, yet it still leaves questions about the recovery of charts and the behavior of the remaining ship. When investigators examined Mary Celeste, they found the main hatch open and the pump unshipped, but functional. The sails were set in a way that suggested the ship had been sailed with care after any evacuation. Some instruments remained in place, others were missing, and the compasses may have been tampered with before boarding. There were reports that the ship's chronometer and logbook were gone, which would make navigation difficult if the captain attempted to return. The theory that the crew left temporarily and then perished at sea explains some details, but other elements suggest a more complicated human drama. We must remember these were real people with families, fears, duties, and training. Captain Briggs had every reason to keep his ship and crew safe, and he would not abandon them lightly. His wife and toddler were aboard, and his decisions would have been cautious and deliberate. If the crew did lower into a boat, the choice implies a perceived threat more frightening than the open ocean. Contemporary newspapers had a field day, and sensational readers quickly offered tales of sea monsters' insurance, fraud, and supernatural abduction. Sailors told stories leaning toward the eerie and the monstrous, as sailors often do, to explain the unexplainable. Some claimed the Mary Celeste was cursed and that objects moved of their own accord. Others said she had a rotten keel or structural fault that would explain an emergency evacuation. None of these claims stand up to careful inspection. The ship had coarse food and water and was still carrying its full manifest of cargo. The crew's personal papers included no frantic notes, and the last log entry was calm. There is also the human factor of fear and rumors spreading at sea. A faint scent of alcohol might cause unrest, and a few words of panic from a key crew member could escalate quickly. On the other hand, Mary Celeste had previous misfortunes and an unreliable past that made sailors uneasy about her. History shows that ships carry reputations, and reputations change how crews react in crisis. But we must return to the day the De Grazia found her and examine facts, not legends. When the Salvors took control of the Mary Celeste, they sailed her to Gibraltar, where a formal inquiry began. Lawyers and admiralty courts probed motives, and the Salvors were accused of foul play to profit from salvage rights. The court examination dragged on, and the Salvaress' reward was reduced substantially, a sign that authorities suspected something odd, but not necessarily a crime. The official record shows confusion more than conclusion. Witnesses contradicted each other, and evidence was fragmentary. Despite the mystery, maritime sales and insurance disputes consumed much of the public attention. In the years that followed, the Mary Celeste story grew into popular fiction. Writers embellished details, added ghostly presences, and transformed a complex maritime puzzle into a sensational tale. Arthur Conan Doyle even wrote a fictional account attributing the disappearance to scientific experiments on board, which further blurred fact and fiction. This blending of myth and reality turned a serious investigation into a legend that would never fully die. For historians, the original Ship-S papers provide critical but incomplete insight. They show a capable crew, a seaworthy vessel, and a cargo voyage that on paper should have been routine. They also show that the Atlantic is a place of unpredictability, where small errors magnify into disasters. One modern approach to the mystery applies probability and human behavior analysis rather than supernatural speculation. It compares the possible sequence of events and looks for the most likely chain rather than the most dramatic. Under this model, a leaking barrel and rising fumes result in a decision to evacuate temporarily. The boat drifts away, the ship moves on, and the separated crew cannot recover their lifeboat. Charts are taken because without instruments the captain might still hope to return, but the loss of the crew makes those hopes impossible. Such a scenario brings together most of the observed facts without inventing monsters. Yet the model leaves the emotional question unanswered. How did trained sailors succumb to fear so quickly that they left a stable vessel for the ocean? The answer may be that fear is contagious, and the smell of explosive vapor is terrifying to people trained to handle under normal conditions. Another layer of complexity is human error in cargo handling. The barrels had been transferred from one ship to another and had a history of leakage. Poor stowage and inadequate ventilation could allow dangerous vapors to accumulate in a closed hold. Had better procedures existed, the crew might never have been called to abandon an otherwise fine ship. We cannot ignore the social context of the time. Seafaring in the 19th century meant long voyages, limited communication, and a culture of risk. Captains often made split-second calls based on incomplete information, and the consequences could be final. There is also the question of the weather. Accounts describe a calm sea when Mary Celeste was found, but earlier storms may have unsettled cargo and damaged seams. Such damage may produce intermittent threats that seem urgent at the time and less visible in later inspection. The Mary Celeste mystery also tells a story about how stories are told. A single, unexplained event becomes a magnet for myth, and every teller adds a new piece of color. Ghost stories sell newspapers, and the Mary Celeste became a perfect subject for Victorian imagination. But beyond sensationalism, the human loss remains real and sobering. Families vanished without closure, and a child lost her parents without explanation. The real heart of the story is not a ghost, but the fragility of lives at sea and the limits of human understanding. In modern times, researchers have used forensic methods to re-examine the evidence, and most arrive at rational conclusions. Leaking barrels, improper ventilation, and a frightened crew remain the leading explanation for what happened. But even a satisfying technical explanation does not remove the emotional mystery. Why did the crew fail to stay together? And why did no distress reach the nearby fleets if the evacuation was planned? These questions show that even the best models cannot fully capture the human choices made in the hours of panic. The Mary Celeste endures because it illustrates the mix of ordinary error and extraordinary consequence. It warns modern sailors and modern listeners about the complex interaction between technology, weather, and human psychology. Today, the Mary Celeste continues to fascinate because it sits at the intersection of maritime history, literature, and mystery. Books, films, and essays examine the case from every angle, and new readers and viewers keep the story alive. Some prefer a clean scientific explanation, others treasure the eerie possibility of the unknown. Both attitudes say something about how we cope with events that resist simple answers. If you stand at the rail on a foggy night and think about the Mary Celeste, You will feel both the ocean's power and the human mind's smallness. That is why a ship from 1872 can still move us and still teach us. The Mary Celeste is not simply a ghost ship, it is a mirror showing our tendency to fear the unknown and to tell stories to fill the gaps. Whatever theory you prefer, remember that real people lived and died and the sea claimed what it would. For historians, the case is a lesson in careful evidence gathering and cautious interpretation. For storytellers, it is a canvas of mystery and imagination. For listeners like you, it is an invitation to wonder and to respect the ocean's depth of secret. The Atlantic keeps its secrets well, and sometimes withholds its answers forever. And perhaps that is part of the CS power and part of the lesson the Mary Celeste leaves behind.